In yesterday's class, we discussed about a simple project to be done in core Java so that can mimic a kind of a login functionality from the user, right? So this was a program which is done by one of you, like Krishna. So let's see like how far this is good. Okay. So the first one, the first thing that I told you to write is a class, user data input or anything. Okay. So the basic class is user login app, and the first thing here you need to understand is every program must have a main method to run it. Okay, so it has a main method which it says like once I run this program, it runs the main method and it calls get user input. Okay, now I say like yeah, okay, it calls this get user input and it calls a static method like get user input here. Now from here, either you can call this get user input directly, or you can create an object for this class user login app, and from that user login app also you can always go ahead and create something like an object, and that object dot get user input. Okay, that's what you can do. Now once you call this method, there is a scanner. Scanner is something which can take input from the keyboard, and if you see that the scanner.in is a method, sorry, system.in is a method which will take an input stream from the keyboard, and it will say like it will give it to the scanner. And when I say scan.next, the scan.next is a method. If you see here, it reads and gives the data in the form of a string. And the same way, like if you want to read an integer, if you want to read a decimal, you can use different types of things. So like instead of next, you can say next big integer, next boolean, next byte, next double. Next double will give you a double value as output. Okay, so based on your requirement, we can say that since we are using a string, we can just use next. Okay, now the next thing here is I'm taking two input parameters, username and password. So let me do one thing. Let me debug the program and explain that stuff. The program execution stops at line number 11 when we start debugging. So from line number 11, I will be going into line number 15, means into this method get user input. So F5, step into that method. So it says scanner. Then the scanner says please enter the username. Now if I say scan.next, it asks for the username. I say Raghu. Okay, then there is something else like please enter instead of username, maybe I'll rename it to password. Okay, please enter user password. So here I will say secret. Okay, now I got it. It's a very good thing that you did like validate credentials, like you're calling one more method. Why? Because in general, in real time, whenever you're trying to code, always make sure that you code in terms of methods. Like each functionality should be written in method wise, so it should be more modular. Okay, so next we are calling validate credentials and passing username and password. Okay, so F5, step into. So the next thing that I do here is I say get password. I'm calling this is something like if you remember the second step that we discussed was once we pass username and password to this method, you go ahead and send the username to the third method which can give you the password back. So you're calling a get password method, and this get password method has username as input. Okay, now if I go into that, here I already have map.put Raghu and password 1, Naveen and password 2 as two username and passwords. So if I say That's my database. So from that database, what is the username that I'm sending? The username that I'm sending is Raghu. Okay. So since I'm sending Raghu again, what I'm trying to do here is I will try to say map.get of Raghu, which will give me password 1. Okay. So I'm returning back password 1 to the previous method, validate credentials. Okay. So once I get the password from the DB is password 1 and password from the user. Okay, sorry, here. The password from the user is secret and the password from the database is password 1. Okay. So now maybe what you can do is in our example I just told you to return back some data, but that's good. If the it did not match, then it prints the login details did not match. Okay. Yeah. Just a second. I hear an echo from some. Itchet, can you please be on mute? Okay. The next thing that we see here is the same old program. I will try to write maybe the same thing a little more in a slightly different manner. I will try to write it, and then maybe I will go ahead and I will present it in this, using the same example. Okay. I will rewrite the same thing. See here. User login app. Control. Yeah, I will check your program time. Maybe email me. I will check this. So the first thing that I will do in this scenario is I say like login app, the main method. So the main method will run well and good. Okay, just understand here. This is a high level skeleton of our project. First, the main method. This one is for main method. What is the use of main method? To run the program. Okay. Now, what is the use of this get user input method? Get the input from the user. So which means this is like a login page where the user enters username and password and submits it to the server in real time. In general, I'm talking about. So once you get the username and password, you will get the username and password to this method, and here this method compares the password from the DB and password from the user for that username, and if say if both matches then it will return true or false. And the last method is like a temporary database which will return a password for the specified user. So is the layout clear to everyone? The first thing. Okay, that's good. Now the next thing. What I say is I will slightly make some changes. Instead of static methods, I will just make them a regular methods. Okay. Now this method sends back either boolean value true or false. Okay. Slight change here. Means nothing wrong with the previous project. I'm just trying to change a little bit and put it in simple terms. Okay. That's the only difference. So the first thing that I do here is as soon as I run my program, I want to call get user input method. Okay. So I say login app equal to new login app. Then the next thing that I do here is app dot, and the first method that you want to call is get user input. Okay. So this is the method that I call app dot get user input. So it calls this method. So in this method get user input, what we will do, we will use a scanner and get or read the input from the data from the keyboard. Okay. So scanner is an inbuilt class. So let me do Control Shift O, or if you hover your mouse here, it says, hey, scanner is a class which is present in the util package. So go ahead and import that statement. So I will import that scanner class. So if you see at line number 3, the statement is imported. Okay. Now scan equal to new scanner of system.in. This is the standard syntax for reading it from the input console. And then please enter username. Then I say once I read something from the user input, scan.next will read it. I will store it in a string called username. Same way, please enter password, which means I'm collecting username and password from the console. Okay. Now the next thing, once I collect everything, I'm storing it in the username and password strings. Now the next thing that I'm going to do here is I want to call the validate credentials method. So here let me call let me create an object again, app dot validate credentials. It is taking username and password. Okay, well and good. So once this is done, what I want to do is I want to store this output into a boolean value saying that either true or false. So what I want to do here is boolean is valid. Okay, what is that I did? I am just storing the output of this method. What is this method? Where is this method? It is present at line number 27. Is this method returning back anything? Yes, it is returning back a boolean value. So I'm storing the boolean in is valid variable, and I'm comparing. Boolean means you will get either true or false. So I'm comparing. A is valid. Okay, means if this line number 22, the highlighted part, if the highlighted part returns true for us, then is valid will be true. If is valid will be true, the if block will be executed. If not, the else condition will be executed. If is valid, then sys out, I say welcome to the app, and else I say sys out invalid. Okay, now this is what is done in get user input. Okay, now there is one more thing that okay, let me complete this flow and then add that additional thing. If I did not explain you that in yesterday's example, yesterday's question, but I will add that. So now at line number 22 you are calling get, so validate credentials and passing username and password. So to this method you will get the username and password. So the first thing that we do here is send the username to the database class, to the temporary database method, so that the method can go and check in the database, hey, if that specific user exists in the database or not. If that specific user exists in the database, then give me the password for that user. Now, there are two scenarios at this point. Either the username that you are trying to send might be present in the database, or he might not be present in the database also. Understand the scenario. So, there are two things that you need to handle. So, the first thing that I say is call the get password method and send the username from this method. I created an object and I say app dot get. Please explain line number 22. Okay, so line number 22. See here, if I delete that, what is line number 22? Line number 22 is nothing but calling a method called validate credentials and passing username that you are getting at line number 17 and passing the password that you are getting at line number 19. So you are just calling a method using the object app. App is nothing but an object of login app of the current class. Is that clear? Okay. Now, if I call that method, is the method giving me back anything? Yes, the method is giving me back. Or what is the return type of the method? The return type of the method is boolean, which means it can either send a true or false, a boolean value. So what I do, I will store that boolean in a variable. So that is what is written at line number 22. Okay, hope that's clear. Now continuing with that, the same thing like what we did at line number 22. 22 is like calling the validate credentials method. The same thing at line number 36, I'm calling get password method. So the get password method app.getPassword of username. So when I say app.getPassword of username, all I do is like I send the username and get back a string. String is nothing but the password. Okay, in our scenario it is the password that we were expecting. So let me store the output in string password from db equal to app dot get password. Okay, so now let me stop coding for this method and come back to this one. So in this one, what I want to do is in the get password, once I get the username, the first thing that I will do is I will create a temporary database using a hash map. Okay, so I say map control shift O to import map and hash map classes, the interface and class. Okay, done, import is done. Now I say map dot put some key value pairs I'm writing, which we can use as a temporary database. Since we are not talking to any backend system, we can use this for timing. Map dot now. Once I have the database ready, which is nothing but the map. Now, if I have a username, I consider that username as a key, and I will go to my database and search. Hey, is there a password for this user, or is there a value associated with that key? Okay, as simple as that. So I say return send back. What exactly you want to send back? You want to send back map dot get of username. Okay, so what are you returning back from this get password method? You are returning back a string. To whom are you returning back a string? You are returning back a string to validate credentials, which is nothing but which has username and password. Okay, so now you return back at this location and store the value in this password from db. So now if the password from DB equal to null. If it is null, we'll see why we write that null condition. Okay, if it is null, I say return false, which means it's an error scenario. Else, if password from DB dot equals the password, return true. Or else, let me change this logic slightly. If password from DB not equal to null, okay, if it is not equal to null and password from DB equals to the password from the user, I say return true, saying that it is valid. Okay. In all other scenarios, I say if that condition is never satisfied, then just return false. Okay. I will explain each and everything step by step by executing. So now I return false to this method at line number 24. Okay. Now we are done with the basic app, and the other thing that I want to explain here is like always the most important thing in any application is validating your uh, input credential or input data. Okay, so when I say validating input data, it means if suppose if the user has sent an empty records, empty data, like instead of sending username as Raghu and secret, if he is sending spaces or anything or null or anything, all you need to understand is you should make sure that you throw appropriate error messages back to the user. Or if you say like, hey, my username should not contain special characters, if by mistake if the user instead of trying to type any number 1 2 3, if you type in some special character, you need to make sure that you send back an error message to the user saying that the invalid username or whatever, something like that. So validating the data is the most important thing in any application. Okay. Now the next thing that we see here is before I call validate credentials, the first thing that I want to do is validate the data. Okay. I want to do here, let me write one more method here, public boolean. It will print like if it is valid or not or invalid or stuff like that. Public boolean validate data, user data, and again I will say string username password. And maybe I'm not sure if sometimes people just get misunderstood, like whether the name username which is written as an argument in the method, should it exactly match with this username. So maybe for that, maybe let me change it as uname and u password. Okay, it need not be, it can be different. Now see here, first thing that I call after line number 23 is boolean is valid data equal to app dot validate user data. I will pass username and password. Okay, so here my only check is like for now, if means if based on your business requirement you can write anything in the data validation. If the business says that hey, this is what is allowed, this is not, this is what we don't allow, so based on those requirements you can write this method. So for now I'm just keeping it simple, and I say if uname dot, or I say if you name username dot length less than 5 characters, or or user password dot length less than 5 characters, then I say return false. Okay, if not, return true, saying that everything is good. And also maybe the first thing that we false. Okay, semicolon. And also the thing I do is if uname equal to null, or password equal to null check before I do a dot operation on the return false. Okay, so the next thing that I say here is like, if you understand this app, then the rest of the programs that we do in our classes, like all the frameworks, everything would be very easy for you. So anytime if you don't understand, stop me. So now I will start explaining the program step by step. The first thing, oh, okay, sorry, I just forgot to write one more logic here. Is valid data I wrote if is valid data sys out. Okay, don't sys out anything, don't print anything. If it is not a valid data, if it is not a valid data that user is giving, I say sys out invalid username and password, or invalid username and password, please enter password 5 each. Okay, some message I'm displaying. And once I'm done with it, I will never ever do any of these things. Why? Because means any of these things means the rest of the validation credentials and all. Why? Because that is an invalid data. So invalid data means I will not work on the data. So I need to write something like return statement here. Okay, I will send back the control to the user. Okay, or I can say like I'll stop the program execution at this point. Okay, now let me start executing from this line number 11, or from the main method. So let me debug. So the first one, as soon as the application comes to the main method, I'm creating an object for login app, and all I do is I send this get I send a request to get user input. Okay, now I say, so it comes to this scanner, scans this, please enter username, and here I say Raghu. I'm showing a happy path now. Okay, and please enter the password. I say secret. Now I say I create an object for the class, and I will try to say, or I will try to see whether the data the user has entered is according to the standards of the app or not. Who knows, like if the user has entered ABC, which means, maybe we'll do one thing, we will see the negative scenario next. Okay, let's see the positive scenario. So then I will go ahead and validate my app data. So now I say I'm calling validate user data method, and I'm passing username and password. What is the username? The username is Raghu and the password is secret. Okay, well and good. I'm calling this method at line number 41. So I'm checking, is the username null? Username is not null, password not null, so it will not return false. Then it will check whether the username length is less than 5, no, or password length is less than 5, no. Everything is good, which means the user has entered a valid data which we can process. Now, since it is a valid data, line number 25 will never be true. Not of true will be false. So it will go to line number 30. Okay. Now we are calling validate credentials and passing username and password. So the username, again the same old username Raghu, and the password is secret. That is what I'm passing. Now I go into that method, validate credentials. Here I say like, hey, first go to the database and see if this specific user called Raghu has any password in the database or not. So for that, at line number 60, you are making a call to the third method, which is kind of a database method. So once the request goes to that method, there first you have created a temporary database, okay, and then from the database you are checking, hey, the username is Raghu. Map.getOff that username, map.getOff key. So this will return back, if it exists, it will return back secret. If not, it will return null for us. Okay. So now the next thing that I do here is, as soon as I complete the execution at line number 77, the output will be returned back to line number 60, which has called it. So it went to line number 60, and the password from the DB, if you see the password from the DB, it is not yet initialized. So as soon as I complete the execution of line number 60, see here, the password from the database is secret, and the password from the user is again secret. Now I'm comparing. Hey, is the password from DB not equal to null? Yes, it is not equal to null. So the first condition is true, and the second condition, is the password from the DB is equal to the password from the user? Yes, it is true, which means the line number 60 condition is satisfied and it returns back true, saying that we have entered some valid credentials. So to whom will this line number 63 return true? It returns true to the caller of this validate credentials method, and the validate credentials method is being called from line number 30. So from line number 62, the control will go back to line number 30. See here, if I execute, yeah, means after 63 it will go back to that line number 30. So it came back here, and is valid data is set to be true. Since it is set to true, then we'll just print welcome to the app, which means like user has logged into the app. So did you notice? It shows welcome to the app. Now, any questions in this happy path or any questions in the program till now? I will explain the negative scenario now.
Yeah, Raghu, I have a question here.
Yeah, go
Can
ahead.
you scroll down to scroll down please in the map and the hash map?
Okay.
So yeah, here. When we are calling a string password from database,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it supposed to store Raghu over there, the username?
Username. Okay. So let's forget username and password concept here. Let's only discuss about the key value pairs. So map dot put of Raghu secret. What is key? What is value?
Key is Raghu and value is secret.
Okay. So now my next question is, if I want to retrieve a value called secret, means you know everything in this map, what is present. So my question is,
Mhm.
if I want to retrieve a value from the map called top secret, what is the key that I need to use?
Oh yeah, yeah, Raghu. So we
Okay.
need to use Raghu.
My question is top secret. So for that, the key that we need to use is Naveen. Okay.
Naveen, yeah.
So what exactly are we calling the keys in this current program?
We are using keys to call the value.
Okay. So in the current program, we are calling the keys as usernames and the values as their respective passwords. So in order to retrieve a value, you need to use the key, which means in order to retrieve a password, we need to use the username. Clear?
Yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you.
And see here, once again, I'm telling at this app, I can spend at least means few more some more time in making sure that you understand each and every bit line by line. I request everyone to let me know if you have any doubts. Why? Because this is the basic app. If you understand this, you can understand the framework like that easy, everything.
Hey, Raghu.
Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, maybe Sai, can you go ahead?
Yeah, yeah. Can you go down? Can you scroll down once?
Okay.
Yes, yes. Yeah, 1 second. Here itself, I think. No, no. Can you scroll a little bit? Yes, here at line number 63, 62, if the if condition is true, it is returning true, right? At
Once
63,
again,
it is returning true.
what is that?
If the if condition is true at 62, it is returning 63. That is true, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So will the 66 line execute after the 63?
After 63. So what will 63 do?
Yeah, it is returning true value.
Okay, it is
Uh,
returning means it is giving back. It is sending back true. Once it sends back, will there be anything or will the control will be still with validate credentials or will the control will go?
no, no. Okay, okay, got it.
Okay, or simple. So when you
Yeah,
say return, it means give back the control and true to the caller.
yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah,
Okay,
someone
I
else.
got one, Raghu.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So on your where you got the validated user data, is there any way? I know there's a way, but can you show me how you can like actually check the username? So if somebody puts in like a random username, and then we go to our database and then check it and see if the username even there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like instead of having to go through all that.
Okay, so that's what the basic scenario is. Let's stick to the very basics. Let's not go into the advanced concept of whether the username is present in the database or not. The basic understanding here is if I don't enter a scenario or if I don't have a username which is greater than 5 characters or equal to 5 characters, that is when I stop. That's the only business requirement that I have.
Mm.
Okay.
No, down in the hash map, right now we're putting in key and then it's linking to the value. I guess we can do the reverse and then put the value in and then check the keys, I guess.
Means what exactly you want to change in line number 74 and 75?
No, no. So like here in our map, we're like we know Raghu and Naveen, as a username.
Uh-huh.
So we don't know what the password is, and this thing is generating the password for us, matching it.
Okay,
I
so
guess.
yeah, see, what I want maybe if I put it this way, let us assume that Raghu and Naveen are already registered users in the application. So since they are already registered users, their details are stored in the database. So if Raghu comes to log into app, he knows what is his password. So all we see, let us assume a Gmail scenario. In the Gmail, you have your ID as Raghu and your password as secret. So you know your ID and password. So you type in Raghu and the secret. Now, if the application hits the Gmail server, there it goes to the database and checks, hey, is there a user called Raghu in our application? In the database says yes. Then give me the record for Raghu or give me the password for Raghu. So it retrieves the password for Raghu from the database. So the app gets the password from the database and the front end gets the password which the user has entered in the login page. Now both will be matched, but we cannot take the password from the user and check whether is there a password present in the database or not. Why? Because there can be multiple users with the same password. Like Raghu can have secret, ABC user can have secret, Ram can have secret as password. So it's always based on the username. That's how we go to database and check whether that user exists or not. Is that like anything which helps you in understanding this question?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So maybe just want to cross check with everyone like Siddharth, Sandeep, Sai, Padma, Krishna, Irshad, Adi. Any questions?
Yeah, well, 1 second ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not the problem in this program, but long back I have sent you a small program to your mail, right? Did you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even in that program, what I face a problem is that I'm just taking an user input with a scanner,
Uh-huh.
and when I try to print the same input which I entered, it is returning some random number. And I try to print, I try to enter 1 to 10 actually,
Mm-hmm.
but it is returning something else like at the rate of symbol. It is saying it is returning some other input. So why that happens?
So when you enter 1, 2, 3 and try to print it again.
It is giving some random print. It is not giving 1 2 3.
Oh, so did you use scan.next or did you use something else like
I used the next line, sc.next line, scan.next line.
scan.next line also prints the string? I'm not sure. One second. Okay, scan.next line just prints the next line. Okay, it prints a good thing for me. Like, see 1, 2, 3 I said it prints 1, 2, 3 for me.
Yes, yes. Yeah, now it is good, but yeah, okay. So if you check that program, I think I can find some problem.
Yeah, I'll check that then. Okay.
Okay, okay.
But I thought that last time when I asked you, like you told, like you got it clarified or something, right? You told
No, 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 Raghu. The
not that
next
one.
class I missed it. So no,
Oh,
no.
okay. Okay, I'll check that then. Or else maybe if
Okay.
possible, just try to resend it once now. I'll check after that. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well and good. So now let me explain multiple negative scenarios. Okay. So the first negative scenario that I'm going to explain here is what if the user enters some data which is not a good data, which means like see here. So we know as a user, as a developer, I know that if the user enters anything less than 5 characters, that means that kind of username will never exist in your database. Why? Because you always make sure that the username has 5 characters length. So if the user enters a data which is less than 5 characters, like ABC or it says RAM, okay, hit enter, and the password he enters as secret. Okay, now you go back and check the data whether it is valid or not. So it is not null, that is true. Now it checks, is the username dot length less than 5? Yes, it is less than 5. Why? Because it has 3 characters. If it is 3 characters length, then you always know that in your application there will never be a username which is less than 5 characters. So the business validations has failed. So the data is not a proper data that the user has added. So the same way here, you can do multiple checks. You can write some regular expressions for checking different criteria, or regular expressions for checking for special characters, and all these things you can do. So if that is the scenario, then I say here return false, which means send back false to the initial method. So if it is false, See, is valid data is false. But what did I write? Not. Not of false is true. Since not of false is true, it comes inside line number 26 and says, hey, please enter username and password with at least 5 characters each. This message is printed to the user and it returns. Returns means send back the control to the caller. So it sends back the control to the main method and the program stops, and you will never be able to execute these kind of statements again. Means the next statements will not be executed. So I say when I execute this, the statement is printed. Please enter username and password with at least 5 characters each, and then I say return. It sends back the control to the main method, and main method stops execution. Okay. Now the thing here is the basic scenario. If the data that the user is sending is not according to your business standards, don't even go to the next level of doing, which means if you know that that is an invalid data, if you know that that is an invalid data, then you need not, or you should not call validate credentials or go to DP and get the password. You should not do all that. So you should stop then and there itself. So validating the user data is the most important thing in any application from now onwards. Okay. Now the next negative scenario that I'm going to explain here is, let us assume that the user has entered some data which is not present in some username which is not present in your system. So the user has entered a name called ABCDEF, okay, and the password he has entered is some random password, okay. So something he has entered. Now I go and check whether is the data according to my business standard or not. Yes, it is according to your business standard. It has everything is good. So you can go ahead and proceed with the data to the next step. So the username is ABCDEF and the password is XYZABCD123. So you send it to the validate credentials. Here you send the username to the get password. Here you say Raghu and Naveen, and you say map.get of ABCDEF. Now for this specific key, is there a value associated in your map? No, which means a simple scenario that user is never registered in your system. Okay, so you can say map.get of username will return null for us in this scenario. Why? That key is not present. Okay, so now the password from the database is null. So what is this? If the password from the database is not null, then only proceed to the next step. Since the password from the database is null, it will not make this check because it is an AND operation. In that AND operation, if any statement fails, then the complete operation will be false. So since the first statement has failed, the second one will never get executed, and the next thing that will happen here is it returns false. See, it returns false to the caller. So is valid is false. So it executes line number 36 in the else block. Invalid credentials. Okay, notice here invalid credentials. So clear with multiple scenarios like how these things are happening. Okay, very good. So what I'm going to do is like we are the next all the next classes, what whenever we see a servlet JSPs or any frameworks, we will try to enhance this app and try to understand how exactly things happen. And the first thing that I want to show here is these are all simple methods where each method has its own functionality defined. So in Java, always make sure that you try to break the functionalities. The first one, try catch, you are using if statement directly here, right? Okay, that's a good point here. It's not a try catch or if statement. Try catch stands on its own. So always make sure that you write all the set of logic that you write inside a try catch block. Yeah, that's a good question, Adip. So Adip was asking a question like, what difference would it make if we were to make the different classes for each method? Okay, so let me take the Phi question first. He is telling like, are we using if condition instead of a try catch? No. Exception T, exception E, and E dot print stack trace. Control Shift F, format is code. Okay, so now whatever code I have written is present inside a try catch block. So that's good side that you have noticed this. Always from now onwards, whatever piece of at least one single point, if null case exclusive. Okay, can you unmute and let me know which one you're talking about?
Uh, so if the username is not present in the database, it is written in null, right? In that case, I'm saying why not try and catch in that case. So we are writing a statement like if username is equal to null, return false, right?
Return false. 1 second.
Yeah, and the third
Okay, I got you. Invalidate
thought
return.
is we can use
At line number
an
47.
exception. Yes, I thought is we can use a null pointer exception there.
Okay. So understand the difference between line number 47 and writing a try catch block. If suppose if the user name is null, okay, if the user name is null, then if I forget to do this, if I forget to do this check, then it will come here and say null dot length. That will actually throw an exception. So instead of doing that, I'm trying to say like I'm avoiding an exception scenario. Always the means this is must and should be done for every time. Anytime when you're doing a dot operation on anything, you always check if it is not null. Always make sure
No,
that
no,
you
no,
check this out. Yeah, go ahead.
no, no, not 47. Can you scroll down it once? Where it is? Yeah, it is written in the password somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Which
here at line
method it
number
is? Yeah,
78.
At 63. At 63, what we're doing is if password from the database is not equal to null.
Mm-hmm.
So not exactly, I could not find exactly where it is. So my question is, if there is no username present in the database, it is returning a null at 78, right?
Uh-huh. Okay.
So so where this is returning to, it is returning to uh, valid
61.
credentials. This at 58, right?
61.
Yeah. Here, why not a try and catch block?
Okay. So why not try and catch block? So if you want to write a try and catch block, what would you like to do in the try catch?
So as it is returning a null, I will try to call a null point exception method.
Okay. So
So
when will a null pointer exception come? The null pointer exception comes whenever you do any null object dot, then only you will get null pointer exception. But let me put one scenario if I understand what you are trying to say. Okay, let me put that scenario here and let me know if that is what you are expecting. So string uh, str or temp pwd temp password equal to map dot get of username. So I get the username here. If the temp password that I'm trying to show here, if it is null, okay, if temp password equal to null, then I can say throw new, some exception I can write. Maybe for time being, whatever I'm writing is not right, null pointer exception, okay, else return the temp password. Maybe if this is what you are saying, let me know if that is what you are trying to say here. Hey, if it is null, send a null pointer exception and try to write a try catch block and try to see if the try catch block can be handled in this scenario or not. Is that what you mean to say, Sai?
No, Raghu. Actually, I did a program. What it in that is, I'm entering a username. So that is not present in database, and that is not Raghu and Naveen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, what I try to do is I used a try and catch block. So as that is not Raghu and Naveen, I used returning null, and in that case, I'm printing username is incorrect.
Username incorrect? Okay. Yeah, let me check your program and see like where exactly you want me to do that try catch or exception handling scenario. One second. Okay, so the first scenario that you did is like you try to scan it, and then once you scan it, the username and password you get, you call validate credentials u1p, and one quick suggestion like make sure that you don't use u and p something like this. Always make sure that you use some valid names like username or password or something like that. Okay. Now the next thing is validate credentials
Yeah.
is what you wrote, then string x and string y. Okay, good. So here you're trying to call get password. So here you say get password and string a equal to null, set string sm dot c. Okay, z dot equals. Okay, catch null pointer exception. So you catch a null pointer exception when you try to get back the request saying like, okay, this sends back a if the a is null. Okay, ss dot equals y. Okay, you will definitely get a null pointer exception. See here, as you said, why? Because you are returning back a from this get password method. What is the value of a? The a value is null and it remains null if the username that you are entering is not 123 or 456. If it doesn't match, it will definitely send a null. So what I say to everyone is never ever do line number 24 straight away. This is the biggest blunder that you can ever do in Java. So these are the basic mistakes that people do. So always make sure that you write a null check. You always perform a null check before you do a dot operation. If you don't do this, then it will, and it for sure it will throw a null pointer exception, which should not happen in production ever. Okay, so all you need to do is just add a null check, but as per your coding, whatever you have coded, this will definitely throw a null pointer exception which you are catching here. So the username is not incorrect. You can say like the username is not registered, please go to registration, like that you can send that message back to the user, something like that. So is that clear, Sai, or still have some questions? Okay. So, but actually, thanks for bringing that point. Like always, there are two things, two most important things. Always write even if you're writing single line of code in your project, make sure that you write it in a try-catch block. Okay, write it in a try-catch block. And the second most important point is whenever you're doing a dot operation, always do a null check before that. Okay, any operation that you want to do on string or any object or anything you want to do, it's always better to perform a null check. Okay, so I'll do one thing. maybe for time being, I will just keep this method or keep this example simple. Means I will remove the try catch block and all these scenarios. Control Shift F, format the code, done. So I will keep the scenario simple and then I will share this example and one more example by adding try catch scenarios. Okay, let me check your program. I think apart from that, I think whatever you've done is also good. Uh, Sai. But maybe one quick thing that you can do here is like whenever you're passing v, that is nothing but the username. If this 123 is considered as a username, you need not perform all this logic. What you can do is you can directly say like as we did m dot get of z, which will get you abc or def if you send 1 2 3 or 4 5 6. If not, it will send you null. Clear?
Question.
Yeah, please.
Can you go back to that code again? Yeah, yeah. Right here, where he's got a try and catch null pointer at the validate credential.
Mhm.
So the username you're gonna put in, and you're already gonna put in wrong, and then you already have a system out print saying username is incorrect.
Mhm.
Why do you have to put a null pointer? I mean, that's like an extra error, no?
So why do you need to catch it, or what is the scenario?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
you already, I mean, we are already printing out the username is incorrect.
Mhm.
Why do we still have to do a try catch?
Okay. The first question: where are we printing username is incorrect?
That's on the actual thing.
Okay. So are you talking with respect to this current program? We are
Yeah,
only
yeah,
printing
yeah. Right, right here.
username is incorrect
Number
at line number
21.
31 only.
Yes.
So okay, one last time, can you ask your question once again?
Okay, so like on line 31, right? We got username is incorrect, right?
Okay. When will
Uh,
that be executed? When will line number
S, what's that?
when will line number 31 get executed?
Line number 31 will be executed after everything comes to line 24 now.
Okay. So at 24, what happens or what causes line number 24 to call line number 31?
So if SS, which in this case SS is password, equals what's Y?
Okay. So the next quick question, when will a catch block be called? A catch block will be called only if there is an exception in your try block. So now if the password, if SS is ABC and if Y is ABC, will the catch block be called?
No.
Okay. If the SS is ABC and Y is BBC, will the catch block be called?
In this case, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, what do we have to?
Okay. So
Because
answer my
we're printing out the says username is incorrect statement.
okay. So just answer my questions. Okay. So you will understand the scenario. If SS is ABC and Y is ABC, will 31 be executed?
If SS is ABC and Y is ABC, it will be 25.
Okay, 25. So my question is, will 30 and 31 be executed?
No.
Okay. If SS is means not 30 and 31, will the catch block and line statement 31 will be executed? The answer is no.
Right.
Well and good. My next question is, if SS is ABC and Y is BBC, will catch block be executed?
Yes, I
Okay.
think it, Wouldn't it execute along with 27?
Okay. So my question is, or if you understand the concept clearly, catch block will execute only if there is an exception. Is there an exception in try block? If so, at what line? What is the answer?
The SS didn't match Y already, so
So is that an exception, or will it cause an else block to execute? First question.
that would cause an else block.
Okay. Is that equivalent to exception?
I don't know.
Okay. No, say that. See, that is not exception, right?
Okay.
Okay. So if suppose, okay, so in both scenarios, the catch will never get executed. Now understand the scenario when catch is executed. Answer this question. When SS is null and Y is something else, ABC, Raghu, secret or anything, will the catch block be executed?
Yeah, because we got the null pointer.
Because we got null pointer. Understood? So when you get a null pointer, he wants to send a custom message to the user saying that the username is incorrect or something. So now did you understand, like only when SS is null, then only the catch block will be executed. If not, the catch block will never ever get executed.
Okay. If it's null, so going back to your code there, you have that mentioned already, right? On the validate. Where's that at? Right there. Username equals a null and new pass right there, 42.
Okay. So in my program, I never did an exception handling scenario. I never used a try
Right.
catch block. If you go to this example, if if I add this scenario like if SS not equal to null ampersand and SS dot equals y. If I just add this code, okay, I can
Mhm.
always guarantee that this catch block will never ever get called.
Right. That's
I took a precautionary step to add that logic. Okay, I took a
gotcha.
precautionary step to add this logic, but since when he was coding, since he did not write it, he was facing an issue like if he entered a username which does not exist in the map, it was throwing a null. So line number 24 will definitely cause a null pointer exception. So to make sure that the program executes fine, he handled it in a catch block using
Got
null
it.
pointer exception. Clear?
Okay.
Awesome. Are you
Yes.
sure?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So if this specific concept is clear to everyone, then the next thing that I'm going to explain here is I would like to take this concept to the next level and understand and help you understand this with the help of a servlets concept. Okay, and here
One
I'm going to,
more. One
yeah,
more.
go ahead.
Sorry. So no. You never answered my question. Like, so what would it happen if we were to like divide this into like different classes?
Okay, yeah, sorry, I forgot the question. See, the basic idea here is to explain this program, then to explain servlets, and then under explain you what is the drawback of a servlet, then divide this
Got it.
application into some parts, then explain the
Okay.
concept of MVC where I will divide all these methods into different classes. So it is a step-by-step manner, but whatever you're trying
Okay.
to say like will be the ultimate goal.
I got you.
Okay?
Alrighty.
Okay, that's all. So So if this is clear, let me go back to the concept of servlets. Okay. So and is the concept clear to everyone? Like yesterday, whatever you did, most of you like the concept of the first basic project like deploying a server, loading it into your Eclipse, running a basic program. So are the concepts clear to everyone? Like what is HTTP request, HTTP response, and all this stuff? Okay, and to just give you a quick overview of what we discussed yesterday. Okay, this is what we have discussed yesterday. Like if you see here, HTTP request and HTTP response is what is going between the client and the server. And when I say HTTP request, it basically contains the URL, the method get by default, and the form parameters. Now, the next thing is when it sends the response, it sends the status code and the type of content and the actual data. And the most important thing at any point of time that you need to understand here is the URL pattern. If you want to hit an application and get a resource which is present in the application, the URL pattern that we understood is HTTP followed / saying that it is a HTTP protocol that I'm using, and I say localhost, saying that I'm trying to call a server which is hosted locally on your machine, and I say colon 8080, which means I'm trying to send a HTTP request to a server which is hosted locally and which can hear or listen to the HTTP request at port 8080 slash the web context. Don't ever say that as a project name, but in all our scenarios that is exactly similar to the project name. So it is the web context. Web context is a unique name that is given to each and every project out there on your server, so that the request can identify like which the server can identify when a request comes. Based on this web context, it identifies which project on the server needs to be called. So this is the web context, and then followed by resource name. Okay, so the resource name can be like, for now we are saying abc.html. Okay, so this is the URL pattern. Don't ever blindly type in a URL. Try to understand what happens in this URL pattern, or what exactly are we trying to give as an input, and what is that we'll be getting as an output. That's the main thing that you need to understand. Okay, so this is the gist of yesterday's class. So moving ahead from that, we will try to understand the concept of servlets. Okay, so I'm just closing this program, and it's good, like those of you who have done that and completed the program, very good. Now going back to this first web project and second web project, the basic criteria here is like create a project and create a HTML page here, so that the HTML page can display the content for you on the server side, on the page which when the client requests. Now the next important thing, the HTML. Okay, one quick question to everyone, or maybe let me continue from here. Whenever I'm requesting for some HTML page, it is considered as a static page, which means a content in that HTML page will never get modified. Okay, content in that HTML page will never get modified. But what if the request that is being sent by the user is a dynamic request? A simplest example that I can say here is, okay, let me go back to this abc.html, and every time I hit enter or every time I say refresh, which means I'm sending a new request onto the server with this URL pattern, and the output that is being displayed for me is exactly the same. If I change this resource to something like abc1.html, which is not present, it shows 404, but every time if I send a request for abc.html, it always shows the same page to me or the same data to me. So the request, these kind of requests are called as a static request, where the data present in the page will not change. Okay, now let's understand about dynamic web requests. Like if suppose if I want to get the server time. Okay, let us assume that there is some other URL pattern, something called as a server time or whatever. Okay, using that URL pattern, let us assume that you want to get the time from the server. So if I if I submit the request, the time should be like this, and it should say like 32 seconds, 33. Again, if I say refresh, it should say 37 seconds, and after some time, if I say refresh, it should show 40 seconds, which means the request, every time it goes to the server, it needs to dynamically build the output and then show the output back to the user, right? So they are all dynamic requests. So when I say a dynamic request, the dynamic request basically helps us to build something like, means if you understand this concept, the HTML page will never change. It will remain as is, means it need not change. But I cannot hard code the time in this HTML page. See, I cannot say the time is like 11:08 and I cannot go back refresh my page until time is 11:08. After some time, the time might not be 11:08, it might be 11:09, like that. So I cannot keep on changing the code in my page. So there should be something on the server side which can handle dynamic requests. Dynamic requests means the request that must be processed on the server side to calculate or to generate some dynamic content based on the user requests. If the user is requesting now, the time should be something else. If the user is requesting after some time, the time should be something else. So those kind of requests are called dynamic requests. Like if you open your Facebook page, like every time you click on refresh, it tries to load different posts, different likes, different comments for you, right? Which means it is all the dynamic content which is being loaded and shown to you every time, right? So all these things should be done on the server side. So their dynamic request handling should happen. So the first question, did you understand the difference between a static request and a dynamic request? Mhm. Very good. Now going on to the next concept. Here we will try to see what exactly or how exactly the dynamic request can be handled. Okay, but the first and the foremost and the simplest thing that I can say is a server. Server says that the Tomcat server, if a dynamic request comes, it says, hey, I cannot process the dynamic request on my own, or it says, I don't know what to do when a dynamic request comes. Okay, now if that is clear, answer my question. If a dynamic request is sent to the server, can the server alone handle that request or not? Yes or no? Okay, someone says no. What about others? What is the answer? Adi, Vishal, Padma, Siddharth, Sai, Ravi. Hmm. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the statement again. So understand my statement and try to answer my question. The statement that I'm going to make here is, okay, but maybe answer this first question before that. Did you understand the difference between a static request and a dynamic request? Yes or no? Everyone? Good. So static request means something which will never change. Let us assume that you are following a blog where in that blog there are a lot of stories which are written. So you go to that blog and say that, hey, in somewhere in January he has written a nice story. So you go to that page and you open it and you read that blog, which means the content on the blog will never change. Okay. or if you go to the next day, if he has written a new story, if you want to read that, you can open that page and the content will never change. Every time you request for the same URL saying that http://abcblogspot.com slash 2015 slash 06 slash 01, and if you say like the user story 1, then always it opens the same page for you, the same story which the user has maintained. The content will never change. But if you try to open your facebook.com page every time, the home page, will it show the same set of posts every time, or will it show different posts every time? It shows different sets of posts, right? So here, the facebook.com is a dynamic request onto the server, which means for loading dynamic data every time. So if that is clear, the difference between static and dynamic request, now the next point that I'm going to make here is a server like a Tomcat or any server. The server says that, hey, I cannot handle dynamic requests on my own. Okay, I cannot handle on my own. That is what it is saying. Okay, now the next thing, or my next question is, if the same thing I'm asking as a question, if I send a dynamic request onto the server, can the server handle the dynamic request on its own? Yes or no? Very good. The answer is no. It needs help, right? So everyone understood that a server cannot handle dynamic requests on its own. It needs someone else's help. See, whenever I deploy an app like Facebook.com, if someone is sending a request to you, will the server know that, hey, someone has sent a friend request or whatever? The answer is no. Someone must tell to that server in the background that, hey, someone has sent a friend request to you, so just display it onto the user. Okay, let's understand that concept here. So that is when the concept of servlet comes into the picture. So what exactly is a servlet, we will see here. Okay, so the first thing, means these are all the basic concepts that we already saw, so I'm just going ahead a little bit, like means we already saw, so I'm going ahead of these slides. So client and a server, they send HTTP request, HTTP response for some pages. So what exactly request contains? Method name, URL, form parameters, response contains status code, content type, actual content, everything. So now you say like static request and dynamic request. So static request which does not change. Every time you hit that URL, you get the same output. But if it is a dynamic request, every time you hit that URL, you get different types of outputs. And now, can a server handle static requests? Yes, it can handle static requests on its own. Can a server handle dynamic requests? The answer is no. The server cannot handle dynamic requests on its own. Okay, so what happens? Server says that, hey, I cannot handle a dynamic incoming HTTP request. So that is when the concept of servlet comes into the picture. Okay, that is when the concept of servlet comes to picture to help the server. Okay, servlet is there to help the server. That is the first thing that you understood. So now with the help of servlet, the server can handle dynamic requests. Okay, now my next question, can the server handle dynamic requests now? If yes, how? What is the answer? Yes, very good. By using a servlet. Okay, excellent. So the first thing you understood here is servlet can handle static data. The second thing that we understood right now is server can understand, or server can handle dynamic requests also with the help of a servlet. That is what we understood now. Now, the next question is, what exactly is a servlet? Okay, so what exactly is a servlet is the next question. So the answer is servlet is nothing but a Java program. Okay, so whatever a program you write in with a .java extension, that is a servlet. Next, my next question is, so when I say a servlet is nothing but a Java program, Okay, maybe let me complete that sentence. A servlet is a Java program which is residing on the server. So why? Because servlet is helping the server, right? So it must be present on the server to help the server. So the complete statement is servlet is a Java program which is present on the server, which can understand dynamic requests and can help the server in processing the dynamic requests. Okay, that is the statement. Now the next question is, if a servlet is a Java program, then does that mean that all the Java programs that I wrote till date are those all servlets? Why? Because till date I wrote all Java programs, .java programs, student.java, machine.java, all those things. So does that mean that they're all they're all servlets? The answer is no. Okay. Now the next question. When I say the answer is no, then what exactly is the difference between the servlet Java program and the Java programs that I wrote till date? Okay. Why? Because we understand that both are Java programs, but what exactly is the difference? So in this scenario, what I want to do is, at this point, I want to write a servlet, at least a skeleton, not the complete stuff. I want to write a skeleton of a servlet and I want to show you what is happening. Okay. So in my first web project under SRC, I will say class, and I can say, okay, there are multiple things I will do here. Maybe let me create a package first individually. So I say com dot easy learn java dot web. Okay, so here in this package, either I can do something like right click, select a class, and I can make this class as a servlet, or there is one more way. How come I don't see that? One second. Okay, there is one more way, like I can directly go ahead and select a servlet. Okay, either I can select a class and make it a servlet, or I can select this servlet and make it and create that one. Okay, so I don't prefer to choose this way. Let's go from the basic scenarios. Okay, let's go from the basics. I will create a Java class and I will make it a servlet. Okay, so here I say my first servlet, a name that I gave. Okay, let me say M as cap, sorry, class name. So now I say a program, so a Java program I created. Now, is this a servlet? The answer is no. Now, how can I make this program as, or this class as a servlet? The answer is simplest answer. All you need to do is you need to say extends HTTP servlet, which is present in java x-servlet dot HTTP package. Okay, line number 3 has imported. Now this is a Java program which has become a servlet for you. So my first servlet, when it extends HTTP servlet, which is a pre-defined class, your class also got all the features of HTTP servlet and your class became a servlet. Okay, this is how you create servlets. Is it clear? Now the difference between a servlet and the Java program that you wrote till date. Okay, good. So now you're able to write a servlet. Now my next question, how do you run a simple Java program? Okay, so when I say a Java program, maybe understand that it is not a servlet, but if it is a servlet, I will not call it as a Java program. I will start calling it as a servlet to just to differentiate. So how will you run your basic Java programs? All you need to do is, yeah, main method. Very good. All we need to do is we need to make sure that we must have a main method to run the Java program. Okay, main method to run the Java program. Now the next question, will the servlet, okay, or will we write a main method in this class? The answer is no. Okay, very good. The answer is no. We will not write a main method in this servlet. Very important point. Now, the next question that you need to understand is, then how can I run my program? So till date, our understanding is that if I want to run a Java program, a .java file, I must have a main method internally. That is what my understanding is. But now I say that in a servlet, I don't write a main method. Then how can I run the program? Or how can I run this Java file? So we will understand this step by step. But the first thing is, we understood what is a servlet and how to write a servlet. Now, servlet is a server-side Java program which can handle dynamic requests. And when a class extends HTTP servlet, then the class becomes a servlet. Then the servlets can handle multiple requests. And this, okay, let's not worry about this, and let's not worry about the last two statements. We will see that later. Okay. Now, the next thing and the most important concept in servlets. When I wrote my first servlet, this is the one, the highlighted part, the last one, my servlet. Okay, my first servlet is extending from HTTP servlet, which is already present to given to you. So let me go into this HTTP servlet. And if I go to the HTTP servlet class, the HTTP servlet class again extends from generic servlet. If you see the hierarchy, HTTP extends from generic servlet, and generic servlet implements from servlet by, because servlet is an interface. Okay, so generic servlet, and this generic servlet implements from servlet interface. So if I go to the servlet interface, this is the topmost class in the hierarchy, where I say that this basic interface has some important methods that we need to understand now, like init, destroy, and service. These are the basic methods which are defined here. Okay, so now if you understand this hierarchy, the next thing that I would like to say here is, a servlet is an interface and then a generic servlet. Generic servlet means a servlet which can understand any kind of request. Like, it can understand HTTP servlet request, it can understand FTP, SMTP, like that. It can understand different types of requests. It is not very specific to HTTP, but we don't want the features of generic servlet completely. When I say completely, it's not the only features that we want. We want some additional features for HTTP servlet. Okay, so there is one more class below that hierarchy called HTTP servlet, which will tell what are all the features or methods that a HTTP servlet can have, or when a request comes, how to handle. So all those are predefined in HTTP servlet. So that is the reason why from this class we don't extend from generic servlet, we extend from HTTP servlet. Okay, now HTTP servlet is what we extend from, and I will explain a few methods which are present in this HTTP servlet in a while. Okay, in this example. Now we understood the basic hierarchy of a servlet. In general, when people ask about the servlet hierarchy, tell that servlet is an interface which is at the topmost level in the hierarchy, followed by generic servlet, followed by HTTP servlet, then followed by your own servlet. Okay, that is the hierarchy. Now the next thing is, what exact means, we already understood this scenario. Servlet does not contain a main method, then how is servlet is invoked? Okay, this is what we are going to understand now. Now whatever logic that I'm going to explain here is the basic fundamental concept. Okay, so what I want to explain here is, every time a request comes to your application, okay, every time a request comes to your, right from now onwards I will be talking about dynamic requests. Okay, anytime a dynamic request comes to your application, it goes to your HTTP servlet class, okay, and in the, means ideally it does not go to HTTP servlet class directly. You will be calling my first servlet, but since in my first servlet we did not write any methods, means basically it calls some set of methods, default methods, init, service and all those things. Since they are not present in this class, ideally it will go to this parent class and will execute them. So that is why I'm telling that it goes to this HTTP servlet class for now. Okay, so it goes to HTTP servlet class, and the first method it invokes is, okay, sorry, HTTP does not have that one. It goes to generic servlet, and in generic servlet you have a method called init, and this is where it goes init, and it calls this method. Init method is called, and there is something called as a service method in HTTP. Okay, so to avoid this confusion, what I will do is I will write those methods here, like what exactly will be called. Init service control space and then destroy. Now understand my question and answer this. In the previous scenario, when there are, okay, sorry, when there are 0 methods in my first servlet, I told that it goes to HTTP servlet and generic servlet and will call some appropriate methods. That is what I told. But now what I did is I'm trying to override those methods here. So init and service and destroy will be called. So now my question is, which class methods will be called? Is it my first servlet class init service destroy will be called, or HTTP servlet class methods will be called? Which one? Very good. It will be called from my first servlet itself. Why? Because I'm trying to override it. Okay. Now the next thing. So here let me write some basic sysout statements. Init method called, and here write a sysout. Service method called sysout. Destroy method called. Okay, I just wrote some sysout so that when those methods are called, you can understand that those methods are being called. Okay, now here comes the tricky part. If it is a HTML page, if you want to call a resource called HTML page, what all you do is you go to your browser and you say like uh, context root, and in that context root, what is the resource you want? HTML. You will call it directly like that, right? Now my next question is, I want to call a servlet from my browser, which means I want to call a Java program from my browser. How can I call it? So that is what we will understand. Okay, so first, understanding the problem is very important. What we are trying to achieve here, we are trying to make sure that from the browser, how can I call a Java program? Okay, is that question clear to everyone? Like what we are trying to achieve here? Okay, good. Now, so what I do is, that is where the web.xml present in the web-inf folder comes into handy. Okay, That is when web.inf comes into handy. So I open web.xml, and every time you open web.xml, it shows in a specific view like this. So make sure that it shows design here. So go back and click source. Okay, if you click on source, that is where it shows an appropriate way for you to understand easily and code for it. Okay, I do control shift F, format it. So whatever you see here, this is all some XML content. So XML, maybe we will try to understand it slowly when we go to some web services and all, but might not be able to cover in depth in the XML. So again, I prefer everyone to go to the same old link like W3 schools, and you go back and read the XML concepts. And the other thing is, like, there are two sites like W3 schools and tutorialspoint.com. Both these websites, like at least this tutorialspoint.com, if you go there, tutorials library, Java technologies, or front end or whatever, if you see where is core Java unrelated tutorials, let me say slash Java. Okay, see here, it shows the Java tutorials here. At least these things are so means they are all like well structured. So maybe if you need some quick reference, maybe you can go to this tutorial and can get some good reference for some examples and some notes from this website. And also the same old stuff like HTML, CSS, or XML, all those things are present in this website also. If not, maybe for those things like HTML and all those things, you can go to the other website like W3 schools. Why? Because in W3 schools they always give like try here, something like that, where you can go around, play with it and change some options, and you can run those programs dynamically for HTML, XML, and all those stuff. So for those kind of stuff, that website is very good. So keep these websites handy, and maybe you can go ahead and refer whenever you have some questions and all. Okay, so for XML also, please go ahead and start understanding XML. But the base concept that I can explain here is, whatever tag you see here, web app, everything is written inside a less than and greater than bracket, and every tag which opens here has a closing equivalent closing tag which starts with a slash symbol, forward slash. So a display name is a tag which opens here and closes here, like forward slash. Welcome file list opens here, closes here. Welcome file opens here, closes here. So XML is again a way of representation. We'll try to understand this more during web services class. Okay. So for now, okay, there are two things that I want you to explain here. The first thing is how to set a default home page for your application. So let me say that when I run my project, when I say run on server, I say finish, restart the server, and the next thing is like window of preferences. When I go to preferences, or there should be some location called browser. uh, uh, system previous perspective. Okay, I will show that. Why? Because in old Eclipse, like, it shows preferences, and below it shows like where exactly you want to display your output. By default, if I run my program, it opens in Eclipse itself, but you can make sure that you can make changes and make sure that whatever is being printed can be printed on your browser itself. You can do that. Okay, see here in this browser itself it prints. Now the first thing that we are going to understand is when I run my application, by default, if I want to display something called uh, welcome page to the user or a home page, so something like, how can I do that? Instead of showing 404, I want to display welcome page. So when I run my program, how can I display this page to the user? That is what I want to show. So I go to my web.xml, and in my web.xml, what I do here is I will try to configure a welcome file to the user. So in this welcome file list, I can say welcome file tag I can use, and here I say homepage.html. Okay, I will make this change, simple change, saying that welcome file homepage.html, and I'll go ahead and rerun my project. Let me do one thing. Okay, let me restart my Tomcat server now. Stop it. Let me clean it. Say project clean. It removes all the existing .class files or anything if you have, and it will recompile and rebuild every time. Okay, now I'll go ahead and run my project. Run as run on server. I say finish. So in our previous scenario, when I try to run my project with the same old URL, it shows 404. Now see here, the URL will be same, but the content that is being displayed here will change. Did you notice here? The content has changed. In the previous scenario, it is the same URL but with 404. But here, it's the same URL but with some specific page. So what did we do? We tried to configure a welcome file. Okay, we try to configure a welcome file. Here, if you want, you can always go ahead and make sure that you can have multiple welcome files that are configured, like here, like abc.html. Okay, you can do multiple things. So what happens is, if home page is not present in your application, I'm renaming that home page to homepage 1. Okay, so if home page is not present in your application, which means if it cannot find this line number 10 welcome file, then it will automatically go and check if line number 11 is present or not. If it is present, it will go ahead and display that as the home page. So I will say run on server. Restart. It should be fast now. Okay, see here, hello user, welcome to project. But in the previous scenario, this is my application on servlets. That is what is being printed. Okay, so is that clear to everyone, like how you can set a welcome file in your application instead of every time you run a project and instead of showing it as 404 and all, you can just show a meaningful page to the user. Okay, so now the next thing, or the next important thing that we are going to understand here, is how you can map a specific URL pattern to a servlet, or simplest way of putting this is how you can send a request from the browser to call a Java program or to call a servlet. That is the first thing that we understand. Okay. Now, yeah, go ahead with the question. Abhi.
So in that welcome file in WebXML, is there a reason why we would write two welcome files?
Yeah, let us assume that there is a scenario where I say like homepage.html is the welcome file. That is what I say. Now, if suppose if by mistake or means in general it's not by mistake or anything in production, it will not happen. But if suppose if you say like, hey, if that page is not present, display some other page, display some other page. If you have multiple home pages that you want to display to the user, if one is not present, then you can configure everything, and whichever or what is, if the topmost thing is available, it will go ahead and print it. If it is not available, it will go ahead. In real time, we will always have something like this, like only like one line, like line number 10, only one welcome file. But there is an option to configure multiple files. If one is not present, it can go and check for the other one. That's the option that I just showed. Okay. Okay. Cool. Now, okay. So, continuing with the recording. So we are planning to understand how we can call a servlet from a browser. So for that, we need certain set of tags. So I'm going to write those tags and explain them one by one. Okay. So you can always
Hey,
take the help of this content manager. Yeah. Any
Raghu.
questions?
Yeah. Hey, when I every time I create a new web project on my Eclipse,
Mm-hmm.
remember we downloaded Subclipse back when, and so I get this these libraries that needs to be installed, but I can't seem to figure it out.
Okay. So did you install Java? You installed Java, right?
Yeah, it's in my Mac. My Windows was perfect. I don't know.
Oh, Mac, I'm not so exactly sure. Maybe I will try to look into this error. Like I will maybe I'll see why this comes. Okay.
Okay. I mean, right now everything's working fine, but
Okay.
I don't know. It probably could be issue down the road.
Okay. Maybe it is trying to find some library path. Users flow the thematic library
Yeah.
extensions.
It even tells me where to go and then what to do, and then I go in there and I do that, and then I got to go to command prompt and do all that, and then I mean
Okay.
everything finds though everything says it's everything. I mean the files are there. It says, but I don't know for some reason Eclipse can't find it or something. But
Oh,
for now, I'm not worried. At least now.
yeah. So it looks like suggesting that the settings path in Java is different like on Mac. So to be frank, like I'm not so exactly sure like how to deal with this thing like Mac. Maybe, but I will check that. Okay.
Okay.
So here, coming back to our example, I will write some few tags and go ahead and explain that. And the tags that I'm going to explain are the basic tags, which always you can take the help of the content manager here in Eclipse and you can start writing. So I say servlet, okay, and next thing is servlet mapping. Okay, these are the two tags. And inside servlet, there are two more subtags that I'm going to write, like the servlet name and the servlet class. And in the servlet mapping, I'm going to write servlet name URL pattern, Control Shift F format. So these are the tags that I want to use. Now, the first thing, I want to call my first servlet. Okay, this is what I want to call. Now, what is the URL that I want to use to call this? If I want to use ABC, if I want to call abc.html, I wrote like abc.html directly, right? abc.html, and I'm able to fetch that one. So now what I say is, let us assume that I want to say uh, first any random name or test. I want to say test when the user types in test in the browser. That is when I want to call my Java program called my first servlet.java. Okay, let us assume that that is the requirement. So the test is considered as the URL pattern. So I say in the web.xml, when something comes as slash test, okay, when this URL pattern comes, go ahead and call your class which is present in com.easylearnjava.web.myfirstservlet. Okay, so in order to make sure that sometimes whenever you write this class, you might write some spelling mistakes or naming convention mistakes. So if you hover, if you click control, don't leave control, press control, keep pressing it, and hover your mouse on top of your class name. If it shows as a link, and if you're able to click on that link and go to your exact class, it means you did a right configuration. If suppose I say like I forget something or I do a wrong configuration, and I press control and I hover my mouse, it will never show as a link, which means it is not a valid configuration. Okay, that is how you can basically check how you can see like whether you have done a valid configurations or not. Okay, so now the basic URL pattern is like 20 is test, and it is my first servlet is what I'm trying to use. Okay, now the next thing that I'm trying to explain here is like how can I hook up this URL pattern to this Java program. Okay, how can I hook up? Now if you see at line number 14 and at line number 19, you have a similar tag called servlet name. That is the tag which hooks up both of them by saying that I give a random name here. The servlet name I give here as temp, any random name that I can give. Ideally, in real-time scenarios when we want to do this, sometimes like we try to make the same name or anything of this first servlet or something like that, we'll try to see. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do here is I don't want to write a same name. Why? Because sometimes people get confused and think that they need to write the exact same name, but that's not the case. So that's the reason why I'm trying to make sure that as much as different names as much as possible, I'm trying to use some different random names. Okay, so the servlet name is temp. So now when the browser sends a URL pattern called slash test, then it checks what is the servlet name. Then it figures out that okay, the servlet name is temp. Now it goes and checks in this web.xml under these kind of configurations, saying that hey, is there a servlet name with temp? Okay, if there is something called temp, then it calls that specific servlet class. So now I say here temp. So see here what happens when a configuration called test comes, this temp will be called. So it will look up for temp, which is nothing but here, and it calls my first servlet. Okay, so here let me copy this and create one more and say it as my second servlet. Okay, just hold on to him just for a second. So I created one more second servlet. The second servlet again extends HTTP servlet, the same old configuration. Now in the web.xml, let me do this. two servlets cannot have the same name, say ABCD. So here I say my second servlet. Now my question to everyone, when the browser sends a URL pattern called test, which servlet will be invoked? So what is the answer, Adi? Okay. Why my second servlet will be invoked? What is the relationship between them? Okay. So I'm not sure if everyone understood this concept or not. I'm again re-explaining the same old concept. Understand here. When a URL pattern comes like /test, it checks what is the servlet name. The servlet name is temp. Then it checks in this web.xml, hey, how many servlet mappings? Okay, there are two servlet configurations that I did. How many servlet configuration tags has the same name as temp? Okay, okay, I found it at line number 14. So the exact name is found at line number 14. So it calls this specific servlet class. So when test comes, my first servlet will be called. Is that clear? Okay. Now tell me what will be called here. Which servlet will be called? Very good. The answer is none. Why? Because is there a servlet is there a servlet tag with this exact servlet name anywhere in my web.xml? Yes or no? Since there is no tag with this name, none of the servlets will be called. So what is the answer now? Which servlet will be called? Okay. Which servlet will be called? Okay. Now my question is, when a URL pattern called test comes in, I want to invoke my first servlet. So what is that I need to write at line number 25? As simple as that. XYZ. Okay. So the next thing, we are able to connect the URL to a Java application, right? So now let me deploy this on the server first. Okay, browser. So so all you need to do is like in order to make sure that it, see, if you are comfortable doing it here, like inside Eclipse itself, when it shows the output, everything is well and good. If not, if you want to make sure that Eclipse will open a default browser, which is what I prefer in general, preferences, go to window preferences, and start typing in something called web browser. Web, if you say web, under general it shows web browser, select that web browser and say, instead of use internal web browser means it shows Eclipse stuff. If not, you say use external web browser. And if you have anything specific, you can select that. If not, say default system web browser. That is what will be shown to you. Okay, I say apply, I say okay. I just want to rerun it once again. Run as run on server. See here, it prints on the it opens the browser for me. Now, in this scenario, it is opening the home page. This is my application of servlets, well and good. If I want to open, or if I want to get abc.html, well and good, I say abc.html, well and good. It opens at abc.html. Everyone knows that. Now, the next example is, if I want to call my servlet, then what is the URL pattern that I need to give here, team? Instead of abc.html, what is the answer? XYZ. Okay, wrong. I need to give here test. Very good. Okay, I say test. Whenever I hit enter, the request first goes to the web.xml and will check, is there a URL pattern which shows as test. If yes, then look for this XYZ. If XYZ, then look for this my first servlet. Okay, now I go ahead, I say test and hit enter. Did you notice here it shows a blank page? Okay, it shows a blank page, well and good. Now if I go to my application and go to the console, did you notice here init method called, service method called? Two methods are being called for you. So init method called, service method called, two methods are being called, which means the request is coming to your servlet. So you are able to reach your servlet. The first thing, is that clear? Okay, now the next thing, I will go back and I can say select that and hit enter, or I can do a refresh. Anything will resend the request again. So I did a refresh. So it will resend the request. Now, if you notice in the console, in the first scenario, you see two inputs, two outputs, but now you see only one output, like service method called, only one is printed. Now, service method is shown here twice and in it once. Now let me resend the request again. Done. You see here, only the service method is being called, which means what happens in this context is, when a request comes for the servlet, then the server checks, hey, is the servlet loaded into the server, or there is one technical term called as a web container. I will tell that shortly. Okay, is it loaded into the server or not? If it is not loaded into the server, first load it by calling the init method. That is when it shows init method. Then call the service method. From the next time onwards, when a request comes for the same servlet, it will not call the init method, since init method is already called. It will go ahead and directly call the service method. Okay, so init method will only be called once in a servlet lifecycle. Okay, now I go ahead and stop my server. Okay, I said stop my server. So if I go back to my console, so you can see init method service, this is what is called. Now when I'm shutting down my server, if you go back and see, the destroy method is called. Okay, see the destroy method output which is being printed here is from our method, like this destroy, which means if you understand the hierarchy init and destroy methods will be called only once per life cycle of the servlet, and service method will be called every time in the application. Okay, clear with the concept? Which method will be called how many number of times? Is that clear? Okay, now answer my question. How many times? Okay, so let us assume that the request I am sending to the server is 10 times. If I am sending a request for 10 times onto the server, how many times init and destroy are called? Once. Very good. Init and service are only called once in a lifetime. Now, if I am sending the same request 10 times, how many times the service method will be called? 10 times. Very good, excellent. Service method will be called every time, but init and destroy will be called only once. Is that clear? Now, the next thing. So if I remove this logic, okay, if I remove this logic from here, which init, service and destroy methods will be called? Exactly, the default stuff will be called, which means the methods which are present in the parent class will be called. So from now onwards, I will not call init, service and destroy, but I will write something else. Okay, but is the concept clear to everyone? Like whenever a request comes, what is that which will be called first? Okay, init and then service will be called. Now let me explain a very important concept. If I go to the HTTP servlet, yeah, I'm going to the same thing. That's what. So if I go to the HTTP servlet extends generic servlet. So in the generic servlet, you do have a destroy method which does nothing, just destroying that servlet, and an init method. Okay. So this init and destroy methods will be called once in lifetime. So initially, for the first time when a request comes, init only will be called. So when the init is called, init internally calls the service method. Okay, init internally calls this service method. So these are the three methods which are called internally. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, very good. Now a little more logic that you need to understand here at service method. Okay, so in the service method in the HTTP servlet class, it takes in something as, I will explain all these things in a while. It takes something as input. It ultimately calls one more service method. Okay, so once it comes to the service method, the most important logic that you need to understand is at line number 186 and at line number 208. Okay, these are the two important things that you need to understand. If I go back to my previous yesterday's class, I told that there is a method which will be called by default. That is what I told, either a get or a post. And by default, get will be sent by the browser. So in the service method, it will check, hey, what is the type of method that the browser is sending? If the browser sends a get request, okay, understand here, if the browser sends a get request, it goes ahead and calls a method called doGet. If the method, or if the browser sends a post method, or if the method that is coming from the browser is post, it calls the do post method. So now my question is, if the browser is sending a default request, what is the final method that will be called in this flow. Very good thing. Do get is the method which will be sent by default, and G caps, why? Because it's like it uses camel notation. Okay, so whenever I send a get method, get request, the do get will be called. Whenever I send a post request, do post will be called by default. So whatever logic that you want to perform on a servlet, write in this do get or in the do post. Is that clear? Which means, now my next question, what is the ultimate method you need to override? Exactly. We override either do get or do post, anything what we like. Okay, do get or do post, anything is good, but for time being we will only override do get. Okay, so do get, it has something which is written inside. Okay, the do get, it has written something inside like sending some error message for net for this, all these things, but let's not worry about these things. Why? Because we will override this and give our custom implementation. Okay, so what I do here is, yeah, that's what I told you, right, Sai? Means Sai was asking a question like how will it understand which method will it call. Okay, so that is what I explained, like line number 186 and line number 208 are the most important lines in the service method. Okay, what is the browser sending? The browser sends the URL, okay, the method, okay, and the form parameters. When there is a method which is present in the browser's HTTP request, my question to everyone is, what is the method name that the browser sends by default? The answer is get. Okay, now inside this service method, everyone knows that this service method is what is called ultimately. Then inside the service method, it checks, hey, request dot, from the request it gets the method. If the method is equal to get, go ahead and call the do get method. That is what is explicitly written. If the method is not get, it checks, is the method is equal to post, then go ahead and call the do post finally. Is it clear? Okay, very good. Now what I do is I will write, see, I will not override init and service anymore. Init service destroy, I will always write my code in the do get method from now on for some time. Okay, so the next slide basically explains the servlet lifecycle. When it tries to create, then it says, is the servlet already created? If it is not created, call the initialize method. Then if it is successful, call the service method. And every time you call the service method, ultimately if the servlet or if the server is shutting down, when the server is stopping, then go ahead and call the destroy method. That is what is present here. Okay, now the next concept that I do here is I just make it as do get. Okay, or let me do one thing. Let me leave this init service destroy as is in my first servlet, and let me go to my second servlet, and in this my second servlet, let me do one thing here. Let me call do get, control space and hit enter. Remove that logic, control shift F. Okay, now here this out. This out do get method is called, is what I have written here. Okay, yeah, no error, everything is good. Now the next thing that I'm going to do here is, we understood how to call a first servlet. Now I will call the second servlet. Okay, so go to web.xml. I already configured second servlet. Now the servlet mapping that I do here is when someone sends ABC, I want to call my second servlet. What is that I need to make changes in web.xml at what line and what are the changes? So if ABC comes, I want to call my second servlet BBC instead of XYZ. Very good. At line number 30. Very good. So at line number 30, instead of XYZ, I say BBC. And always I tell one thing to team. Make sure that you press control, don't leave control, hover your mouse on top of it and make sure that it converts it into a hand symbol to just confirm that the configurations whatever you did here is valid. Okay, sometimes people might do a wrong configuration and they go ahead and try that and it doesn't come and they think that everything looks good but why it is not coming. So just validate before it comes. Okay, so now let me redeploy and as run on servlet. I say finish. Okay, by default this is printed. Now in this URL pattern, tell me what is the specific URL request that I need to type in here to call my second servlet ABC. Very good. So I say ABC and hit enter. So something is called. Understand here, I'm not calling abc.html. I'm just calling ABC. Now, my question to everyone, will the init method be called or not? The answer is yes. Init method will always be called, but you will never know which init method will be called. The init method which is present in the generic servlet class will always be called if this is a request which is coming for the servlet for the first time. Since we are calling my second servlet for the first time, init method and service method are called, but there are no sysouts in them, so you will never observe that those methods are being called, but yes, they are always being called. Okay, always means that they will be called, but ultimately what is being called, it calls the do get in our in my application. It calls the do get method in my second servlet.java class. So is that clear how the request is coming to this place? Okay, okay. Now the next thing and the most important thing. What I want to do is like, okay, one second. Is it really clear to everyone? Can I go ahead to the next level? Okay, yeah, that's very good. So the next thing that I'm going to show here is how to display server time to the user or how to send dynamic data to the user. Why? Because every time you hit something, it shows a blank page to you, right? So let's see how you can send some server time here. So what I will do here is I will make sure that I will use create a new servlet called server time, and server time extends http servlet, and then I say do get, which we all know, and here, okay, look here team, I will write some set of logic. I'm not sure if you can completely understand that logic with this simple example, with one example at least. I'm sure that you need, I'll explain one or two more examples to make it clear, but for time being, the only thing that you need to understand here is like just understand the basic syntax and what is happening. That's the concept we just understand. So my intention is to make sure that whatever I want to print, I don't want to print on the console, rather I want to print on the browser. That is the requirement. So the output will not be, means I can always print on the console, but that's not my requirement now. I want to show something to the user. Okay, so let me write some standard statements. Response dot get writer. Okay, I will get a writer object, which is nothing but a print writer object. Print writer, print writer, and a name. So why I am using out to make it in sync? Okay, I can use, instead of out, I can use anything ABC or anything here, but we will understand that. Okay, in a while. I say out. Now I say out dot print ln. I say new date. Date is a class which is given in Java. Control Shift O. Java.util.date. Okay, date package, which will give you the system date, time, and all that stuff. Okay, so I want to print this. Okay, out.println, and I say response. Okay, yeah, I need to set the content type. Response dot set content type as HTML slash text. Okay, so the first thing that I'm trying to send in the response, we need to set the status code. See, if I want to send the status code, I can set the status code. If not, I can leave it. Why? Because if it is a success, the server will automatically insert one for me. And the next thing is response.set content type. The content type is nothing but the HTML by text is the content type that I want to display to the user. And I say the actual content is present at line number 19. That is nothing but a new date. Okay, so this is a simple logic that I have written. Okay, now what I do is I will go ahead and make sure that this server time can be called from the browser. So to call it from the browser, what I do is I go to my web.xml, and here I say one more configuration, and I say here I say time com.easylearn.java.web. server time, and then the next thing that I write here is the mapping. And one quick question, what is the URL pattern that I need to write? Understand my question. What is the URL pattern that I need to use here? It's not ABC. If I call ABC, it will call again this. Okay. Oh, this is a good scenario which I never tried. So, okay, I think it will call only BBC. We'll test this scenario in a while. But okay, if not, let me just 1 second. Let me test this. What will happen? I think it will show some error during the server startup, I guess. Yeah, it shows an error configuration saying that, hey, there are two configurations that you wrote here. Server has started, but our application is not deployed properly. That is the reason why, if you notice, it shows 404 for us. So if you see, or if you understand the error, so this is what I told you, team. When your server starts, always make sure that you go ahead and inspect the log which is present in the console. Okay, so here it starts complaining that the servlets named BBC and time are both mapped to the same URL pattern ABC, which is not permitted. Okay, so doing this is illegal, so it's not permitted. So let me do, instead of ABC, ideally it can be anything. So most of you told the same answer, like it can be anything. So for now I say display time, T caps, display time is what I wrote, or all small I will write like this. Sorry. So now I go ahead and redeploy it, run as, run on server, say finish, restart the server. So if you see the console, everything is going good. Everything is good. Everything server startup done. Everything is good. So it shows this. Now what I do is I will just type in the URL pattern called display time. Okay. Again some mistake I did here, I guess. I know the mistake. One second. Set content type. Okay. One second. Set content type. Text by HTML. Sorry, this should be this way. Text by HTML. Okay. Made these changes. Now let me go back. Run on server again. Just rerun it. Restarting. So if I hit display time, display time, hit enter. Notice here it shows the system time on the browser. Now if I refresh, notice here this 12 gets modified. It becomes 22, 23, 24, 26, 27. So did you notice here, team? Every time I send a request, a dynamic request onto the server, who is creating the dynamic response? The servlet is creating a dynamic response and is sending back the response back to the client. Is this concept clear to everyone? Okay. Awesome. Okay, it shows 56. Now if I run it again, it became 3501. Okay. Now if that is clear, let's go to the next level. Okay, so the first thing that we understood is like response means not to worry about this code. I will explain it later, but just simple lines of code. See, it need not be out only, it can be ABC also. ABCD. Okay, ABCD dot println. But in general, yeah, sending was static, responding was dynamic. Okay, yeah, that's what we are going to understand right now. So we are able to handle a dynamic request. Okay, for calculating some dynamic maybe I don't say a dynamic request, but yeah, dynamic request means the output is being calculated dynamically every time. Okay, the output is dynamic every time. Now the request can be same, but the output differs. Okay, so if this concept is clear, then comes the most or the important concept underlying these basics, like how these things are happening, how the init is called, how the doget is called, or how a request is being responded. This is the most important concept that we are going to cover now. Okay, now so the important point here is, see here, I will explain a basic flow at a high level and the next slide explains it in detail. Okay, so what exactly is a client sending? Client is sending a request onto the web server. Now internally, you see, don't assume that all these diagrams are different. Internally, a part of web server itself, everything is present, but I just try to separate them out. So a web server, whenever it gets a request, the request, what exactly is happening in the current flow, we are able to understand that the request, when it comes for this servlet, the do get method is being called ultimately. That is what our understanding is. But what is happening internally, or who is calling this server time? So the first question or the initial question that we had was, hey, even though this is a Java program, we never had a main method, then who is running the main method? That is what the question is, right? Now the answer is, even though if we don't have the main method, who is calling? The web container is calling the servlets. And there is one more question, like who calls that init service and destroy, and who is responsible for calling all these appropriate servlets? The answer is the web container. So web container is internally a part of web server. So inside Tomcat itself, it's all a piece of logic team. It's all piece of software that is all coded. So internally inside the web server, like the Tomcat, we have a web container. So what exactly the web container does is, it knows all the servlets. Okay. So whenever a request comes to the web server, the request is given to the web container. The web container calls the appropriate servlet. If it is my first servlet request, it calls my first servlet. If it is for server time servlet, it calls the server time servlet. And then the servlet, whichever is called, it executes either a do get, do post or whatever. Then it gives back the response to the web container. Now the web container gives the response back to the web server, and the web server shows the response back to the client. Okay, this is the basic flow of how things are happening. We never saw a concept of web container till now, but the answer to your question, like who is calling or who is running the servlets, the answer is the web container. So the web container first checks, hey, is the servlet being called for the first time or not? If it is being called for the first time, it checks, hey, is it loaded already or not? If it is not loaded, it calls the init method. If it is already loaded, it calls the service method. Is this clear? Okay, awesome. Now this is considered as the kind of the heart of the entire servlets and all your future understandings. Okay, understand this concept well and things will be very easy. To explain this concept, I will just go back to this slide number 11 and I will ask few questions. Okay, so now when a client is sending a request onto the web server, what is the kind of protocol or what is the kind of request? So it is HTTP protocol. Okay, well and good. Now my next question. Can a web server understand HTTP protocol or not? Very good. The answer is yes. Okay. Now my next question. Can the servlet understand what I meant by a servlet? Servlet is nothing but a Java program. Now, can a servlet understand HTTP request protocol? Yes or no? Excellent. A servlet can never ever understand HTTP protocol. Why? Why? Because HTTP protocol is only between client and server. It is not between a Java program and a client, right? Now, my next question is, if a client is sending HTTP protocol, but a servlet which is a Java program, if it cannot understand a protocol, but still the request is being sent, which means A servlet means I'm just telling something here like a servlet is a Java program which can only understand a kind of an objects or some method calls. It can only understand that objects or method calls. Now, how come a HTTP request protocol is being converted into a method call or an objects? Any guess who is doing that? The web container. Excellent. That is the answer. Okay. So the web container acts as a translator. Now, the next question to everyone. Client sends a protocol to web server. Now, my next question is, I'm talking about the second one. So, web server sends what exactly to the web container? Protocol or something else? Good. It sends the same old request protocol to the web container. Now, my next question about the third one. Will the web container send the same old protocol to the server or will convert it to something else? Very good. It will not send the protocol directly. The web container converts it into object. The HTTP request protocol, understand here the two terms that I am trying to use. The HTTP request protocol will be converted into HTTP request object and will be sent to the servlet. Now my question, who is converting the request protocol into request object? Web container. Very good. Now my next question, web container gives the HTTP request protocol, HTTP request object to the servlet. Now, what exactly the servlet gives the web container back? Is it an object or a protocol? Very good. The servlet will give HTTP response protocol. Again, sorry, team. It gives HTTP response object back to the web container. Okay. Servlet is giving an object back to the web container. Now, my next question. Will the web container send the object to the web server or not? Very good. It will not send the object. It will send the protocol, the response protocol, HTTP response protocol back. So the web server gets the HTTP response protocol and that is what is being sent back to the client. Clear? Means what is happening internally? Excellent. So that is the whole gist of the next slide. A little bit more in depth. Okay. So whatever I'm trying to explain, follow with the help of these numbers. Okay. 0. First, a client sends a HTTP request protocol to the server. Then the web server sends the same old HTTP request protocol to the web container, and the web container sends HTTP request object. Okay. And see here team, whenever you see HTTP servlet request object, is being sent by the web container with all the data. So this request will have all the data which the user is sending. Okay. Now the web container also sends an empty response object to the servlet. So it also sends an empty response object to the servlet saying that, hey servlet, take this empty response object, and if you want to send back something to the user, load all the data into the response object and give it to me so that I can give that to the user. So two things. Hey servlet, if you want something which the user is sending, then go ahead and look in the request object. If you want to send something back to the user, use this response object. Now, is it clear? Like, what are these two parameters for the doGet method? Okay, very good. So web container sends the actual request object and it needs to send the empty response object back. Okay, now the servlet, if you see this servlet, any servlet which is called, it calls the service method, means init service. Just say I'm not interested in all those things. It ultimately calls one of the HTTP methods like a do get or do post, and it creates a response, and the response object will be given back to the web container. Number 4. And the number 5 is the response object is converted back into HTTP response protocol given to the web server, and the web server gives it back to the client. Okay, this is the most important slide. Let me know if you have any questions. Excuse me. Yeah, very good thing. Awesome. That is how internally the flow goes. Now, two questions, two very basic questions. In our current project, in I'm talking about the server time. Okay, I'm talking about the server time. In our server time project, am I sending any form parameters to the server? Yes or no? Very good. The answer is no. Well and good. Okay. Now the next question. If I'm not sending any form data, okay, maybe not this question, maybe the next question. If I send some data from the browser to the server side, and on the server side, how can I retrieve the data, or from where can I retrieve the data? The answer, okay, so if I send some data from the browser to the server, on the server it comes to this server time class, and it calls the do get method. If the request comes to this do get method, from where exactly I can get all the data that is being sent from the browser? From the servlet. It's not from the servlet. See here. Excuse me. Sorry. So see here. The data is being, so when I say data, let us assume that HTTP request data. So the data is coming in HTTP request, some form data. So it is being converted into HTTP request object. So on the server side, if suppose if the user is sending any data from the browser, you can get the data using this request object. And if you want to send something to the user, you can use this response object for sending back. Is that clear? Okay. Yeah, very good team. So now the basic thing maybe will be done in just 10 minutes. So the basic thing that we are going to understand here is, the next concept here is like how exactly we can implement the same old project that we discussed in what I say is like the basic core Java login functionality. Okay. So what I want to do is like I want to open that core Java login functionality, implement the same old core Java login functionality in Servlets project so that the user can get some dynamic request from a page. Okay. So see here, I will close all this my first servlet. So user login app. So now my idea is to just use the same old logic and try to implement the same project using a servlets project. Okay. Now in this program, from where exactly I am trying to get the input? Anyone? Any guess? In this project, I'm trying to get the input from a scanner. Okay. Now, let me go to my servlets project. And in this servlets project, what I will do is I will try to send the data from the browser. Okay. So see here. For that, I will write a simple HTML page. Size, I call it as login.html. Okay. And let me write one more page called success.html. .html. So what is the difference between XML and XHTML? So XHTML has some additional tags that you can write in XHTML. In general, when you're using something like JSF or something, that is where you mostly write XHTML. That is different from HTML actually. But you can use all the HTML tags that you use here in XHTML. Okay. So first let's start with the basic concepts. So if it is a success, I say user welcome to the servlet login app. Okay, this is what I wrote, some message. Now let me go to a login.html page. In this page, I want to write some set of HTML codes where I can send some data from here onto the server. Okay, just like login credentials where I can give it to the user. So from now onwards, whatever code that you want to write in in any HTML page, which you want to send to the server, you must write inside a form tag. Okay. The form tag, I will explain that action later. So form tag is the one where you write all your logic from now onwards. So inside this, the first thing that I will try to do is I will give two text boxes where the user can enter username and password. Username and password. So here I will use some HTML tags. So I say input type equal to text, and I will give a unique name to this like uname. Okay, and then do a BR. BR stands for break line, and in the next line the password will be printed for you. So input, and here the type will not be text. Why? Because we want to hide the password whatever the user is typing, right? So I say type equal to password, and I give a unique name to this field called u password. Okay, and then again do a BR for break line, and then I write input type equal to submit. Okay, so from now onwards, instead of making this homepage.html as my homepage, I want to make login.html as my default page. So I go to my web.xml and I will configure the welcome file as login.html. Okay, so the basic thing that I did here is created a login.html page, written a form, and in that form, inside that form opens at line number 9 and closes at line number 18. Inside that I wrote three fields. The first two are for using username and password input fields, and the third one is a submit button. And type equal to submit, I can say value equal to login to app. Okay, so now username and text box, and I made this page as the home page for the application. Let me run it. So it opens login page. So here I can enter some username, password, and I can hit enter so that the request can be sent onto the server and the server can respond back. Okay, whether it is a good or bad or whatever. Okay, now I want to explain a happy path here. Okay, and want to show what happens in this specific scenario when user enters some valid credentials. So for that, what I do is I create a specific project or a class or a package like com.easylearnjava.login project. Okay, and let me copy the entire user login or login app completely into this one. So what is that login app? The same old application that we saw in our core Java project. Now the first question, this login app is a simple Java application. How can I make this application into a servlet? How can I make this class into a servlet? Get rid of main method and extend HTTP. So I can say extends HTTP servlet. Okay, so I extend HTTP servlet. Very good. Now will this HTTP servlet class, will it be run using a main method or will it be run by the web container? Who will run it? Very good. Web container runs all the servlets. Web container maintains the life cycle of the project. Sorry. Web container maintains the life cycle of a servlet. So we don't need this main method. So I will remove this main method. Now, when a request is sent from the browser, what is the default method that will be called? Init method will be called, right? Init method will be called. And okay, I'm not worried about init service destroy, but I'm asking about the ultimate end method which will be called do get. Very good. So do get is what will be called by default. So I say do get and I hit enter. I remove this, and whatever logic that I'm writing in user input, I will remove that. Or let me do one thing. I'm calling get user input directly from do get. Okay, or maybe this might not be the preferred way of doing. Let me delete that. So since do get will be called, so what I do here is I will try to take all the logic here and will cut it and will paste it in this method. Okay, so what I did, instead of get user input, I removed this method and I used Control Shift F format, and then I'm just making sure that all the logic in the previous method is shifted to do get method. Okay, now the next thing, in our previous example, in our login app, okay, in our login app, from where I'm talking about a Java project, from where exactly we are taking the input? We are taking the input from the scanner. Now in my servlets project, from where exactly can I get the input? Will I get it from the scanner or will I get it from the user? Very good. We get it from the web browser. Very good. So now When I go to my login app here, do I need a scanner anymore in this class? Yes or no? Very good. We don't need a scanner for in this class. Now we get the data from the browser. Now the next question to everyone. When the data is being sent from the browser, how exactly the browser sends the data? In what or who gets the data for us? Or where exactly the data will be present? No. I will show you one picture. Tell me now who is getting the data for us, or where exactly the data is present. Not the URL, not the server. You're missing the basic concept. What exactly client sends to the server? HTTP request is what client sends to the server. Now inside HTTP request, what are all the things that are present? Yeah, URL is present. It's not only the URL in a HTTP request. Yes, URL, method, and the form parameters. Do you understand? Now, whenever I say the data is nothing but the form parameters. Now, how exactly the data is coming from the client? It is coming via the HTTP request. Who is bringing the data? The HTTP request brings the data for us. Is that clear? First thing. Okay, good. The HTTP request is bringing the data. Now I will go back to the slide and see here. HTTP request brings the data, and it is given to web container. Web container converts everything in the HTTP request into request object and gives it to the servlet. Now my next question, where exactly will the data be present by the time the request comes to this do get method, or the control comes to do get method? Excellent answer. The data is present in REQ, which is nothing but HTTP servlet request object. Okay, so when the web container converts the HTTP request, it places everything in the request object and sends it to the server. Clear? Now if that is clear, answer my question. Where exactly the data is present in the current context in login app.java? Excellent, it is present in REQ. Okay, now we don't need a scanner. Okay, well and good, we don't need a scanner. So let me remove the code which is used for scanner. Okay, so now the next thing that you need to do is get the username and password which the user is entering in these fields. Now the next question to everyone, when I am writing my HTML page, did I give any name to this text box? Yes, we gave a name to the text box, and we gave a name to the uname. Very good. And to the second text box also, like password. So for just for your reference, I'm going to HTML page, and uname and password are the names that I'm given here. So here I will come back and say like, hey, request object, in that object there is a parameter. So get me the parameter, get parameter, and what is the name of the parameter? The name of the parameter is uname, and here the request dot get parameter u. One second, let me just cross check that one. Password all small. Okay, I will say password. Now, my question to everyone. Did you get the username and password from the browser or not? Yes. Now, the next question is, do you need to change anything else in the program? Okay, very good. We need not change anything else. Every means, yeah, at a high level, if you want to send back the response, all those things, that is good. But at a logic level, we don't change anything. Like you get the username password, you validate your user data, you validate your credentials, you go to your credentials class, credentials method, you do everything, you go to your get password, you get the password, you get stuff, everything, and you do a sysout. But instead of doing a sysout, if you want to go to success page, you can do something else. But if you want to go back to login page, you can do something else, right? So apart from those things, going to success page or login page, are there any changes that you are trying to do to your code? No, right? As simple as that. That is what I mean to say. So now in is valid, what I want to do is I just want to add two more simple sentences like response dot send redirect. So where exactly I want to send the redirect to if everything is valid. If everything is valid, I want to take him to success.html page. If things are not good, if it is an else block, take him to the same old login.html. Well and good. That's all. Nothing else changes. Everything remains the same. But now the most important thing is pending. How can I hook up the HTML page and the login app.java? How can I hook it up? XML, very good. And also one more important thing. In login.html, I did not configure action there. Okay. In that action, I need to write a specific URL pattern that this page must send onto the server. So the URL pattern that I write here is, I will explain that slowly once I execute this. Maybe I will what I say is my app login is what I write here. So this is the URL pattern that I need to map in the web.xml. So here what I say here is the servlet mapping, and here I say what exactly I write in login.html, my app login. I copy this my app login and come here, paste it and say something, some name, some random name, login, and the servlet mapping. Just for your understanding, I am writing both at one location almost. Control Shift F, and I say login and call login project dot login app. Okay. Now, if this URL pattern comes, this login app is called. So I'm cross checking whether the configuration is right or wrong. Press Control and hover my mouse. Yes, it is good. So if this URL pattern comes, this servlet name is invoked, this servlet name internally calls this login app. Okay. So now who sends this URL pattern? The URL pattern is sent when the user hits submit button from the login.html page. So this sends my login app where it comes here and it calls this login app and it does all the validations and it goes either to success or failure pages. Any doubts till this point? Okay, good. Let me go ahead and run it. Run on server. So now see here, what I want to do here is I will go ahead and show a happy path now. I say Raghu and I say secret. Okay, I hit login to app. Once I hit login to app, did you notice here, welcome to Servlets login app? What happened? See, it came to here, it came to this location, it validated everything, everything is good, it went well, and it went to success.html page. Now, let me show one more scenario. I will say Naveen and I will say top secret. Okay, I say login to app. Again, everything is good, it went to success page. Now, let me show a wrong scenario. I say Naveen and the password, some random password I type in and say login to app. So to which page I will come? Will I go to success.html page or will I be in login.html page itself? Yes, very good. I will just come to login.html page back again. See here, I came back to login.html page back again. And if you notice here, it prints invalid credentials because of that else block sysout 35 line number. Okay, so whatever I wrote at line number 33, response not send redirect, we will understand this more in tomorrow's not tomorrow, Monday's class. Okay, but for time being, if you want to go back to a specific HTML page, you can use this scenario like line number 33. Okay, so the first thing or the next one which I want you to understand here is, I will explain more on this app if you don't understand, but when you're practicing, the most important thing that I want you to understand here is, my login app is a URL pattern that is being triggered from the browser. Okay, that is being triggered from the browser. So when that request comes, that goes to web.xml, maps to this my login app and calls this login app, and the login app, everything remains the same. The only thing is you write a do get method where all the request, all the data is present in the request. So say request dot give me the data that I want, and ultimately once everything is done, you say response dot send redirect or response dot send redirect to success or failure pages. So did you understand here now how you can create a basic login app in a HTML page, send the request onto the server and get back the response? Clear to everyone? Okay, so any doubts before we wind up? Okay, so if there is a case, I'm just stopping the recording.